All right, guys. Today we are going to be reacting to why does American beer taste like water? I always wonder that. Why does the American beer taste like water and trash? I'm not a beer drinker. I very rare drink some beer with my wife. I'd say like once a year, wine twice a year kind of thing. We're not big drinkers. But when we drink beer, it's like, damn, what the hell's going on here? Let's jump in and see what's going on.
American lager. Crisp, light, refreshing.
Hams. Mmm.
It's as American as baseball and apple pie. Woo! Snooki and Abraham Lincoln's beard. And here in America, we sure do like our beer. We're ranked second in the world for overall beer consumption, an honor we've earned by tossing back roughly 51 billion pints of suds every single year. And although there are a lot of options to choose from, the style of beer we drink the most, by far, is the traditional light American lager. Of course, not everyone else in the world loves American beer.
We find your American beer is a little like making love in a canoe. It's f***ing close to water.
Very well-made beers. These are very high-quality beers, but they're kind of light on beer flavor.
This is Ray Daniels, founder of the Cicerone Certification Program in Chicago, longtime brewer and expert beer drinker.
And the main reason is because there's not that much malt in these recipes.
Yeah.
And the Germans have a saying that malt is the soul of beer.
Yep.
And there's not that much malt in these beers.
But how did a style of beer that's drinkable and refreshing, yet has no
It sounds like a way of just creating shortcuts.
soul get to be so popular? 5 reasons: German immigrants, Prohibition, brewing technology, World War II, and the post-war consumer packaged goods economy. But I'm going to get to that in a minute. Excuse me. Could I get a cool, refreshing lager, please?
Here is our beer list, categorized by country. Lagers are listed on the left alphabetically by varietal.
Just Coors. Thanks.
Okay.
Paper cut. Why is that? I would say, like, for most of American history, this was the kind of beer we were drinking.
Right. Well, it really has to do with brewing technology and the migration of German-speaking immigrants coming to the U.S.
Between 1850 and 1900, millions of German-speaking immigrants migrated to the United States. Prior to that, British-style ales dominated the beer industry, but the Germans wanted something different.
Wanted to make a nice, golden, clear, pale beer, because that was the style of beer in Germany at the time. But American barley, the stuff that grows here in the United States, is different than the barley that grows in Europe. And they couldn't make a clear beer with American.
It's the land. There's probably something in our soil that's not that similar to German.
6-row barley because it has a higher protein content.
Oh.
The problem, they were very annoyed. They couldn't get clear beer.
I mean, I would be pretty annoyed I couldn't get beer.
Absolutely. You know, it didn't look pretty the way it was supposed to.
Yeah.
So they figured out that if they took a low protein grain, like corn or rice, and mixed it into the recipe, that they'd get a lower protein content in the finished beer, and the beer would turn out clear. So that was the original reason. It was not to make it cheap. It was not, anything else, but they wanted a nice, clear, golden beer.
The Czech-style Pilsner, which is a type of lager, quickly became the beer of choice. Breweries began popping up all over the place, many of which were owned and operated by German immigrants like Adolf Coors, Frederick Miller, Joseph Schlitz, Frederick Pabst Blue Ribbon, full name, and a soap maker named Eberhard Anheuser. The brewing industry in America flourished, and by 1873 the country had over 4,000 breweries.
Wow.
However, this golden age of golden lager would not last long. The boom in the beer industry was accompanied by a boom in other things associated with beer, like public drunkenness and domestic violence. Then something happened in America that set the brewing industry back a few decades. When the 18th Amendment passed in 1919, Prohibition in the United States had officially begun. The production, transport, and sale of alcohol became illegal, and the beer industry all but ceased to exist, with the
Talk about mistakes, man. This was dumb as hell.
exception of a few industrious entrepreneurs. When Prohibition was finally repealed in
Al Capone.
1933, only a fraction of the beer manufacturers from the late 1800s remained, and that number continued to drop every year. Strict state laws combined with heavy government regulation made it difficult for smaller beer companies to survive, not to mention the fact that home brewing was still illegal. During World War II, grain was rationed in the United States, forcing beer makers to rely more heavily on adjuncts like corn and rice. This slowed the reemergence of smaller breweries, but allowed bigger, established breweries to flourish. After the war ended, America didn't need to ration anymore, and we began to adopt a more liberal approach to consumption.
You know, and then the 20th century was pretty much a century of consumer packaged goods in the United States. We had very narrow media outlets. You know, when I was a kid, there were only 3 TV stations, period. I know, ancient history, right?
Yeah.
Everything got narrowed down to a very small number of brands with universal distribution throughout the country. It was true for soap, breakfast cereal,
Yep.
coffee was Folgers
Everything.
and Maxwell House. I mean, everything got narrowed down.
Oatmeal, like
Small
everything.
number of consumer brands, and beer was no different.
Throughout the second half of the 20th century, the number of independent breweries dwindled as beer manufacturers merged and companies like Anheuser-Busch and Miller continued to grow. By 1978, the beer-making industry hit a record low, with only around 80 breweries operating in the U.S. America's beer got even more watered down when the big beer companies devised a brilliant strategy to sell more beer. Light beer.
That baseball, yeah. Yeah, you will find light beers in baseball field. And especially I like it. There's the, I don't know if you guys experienced this, but going to a baseball field, popping up like a seltzer or a light beer and eating a hot dog, sitting down, you know, cooking something in the outside, man, you cannot get something. You're not there to get drunk. Just to have a good time. Then you're hearing the hit of the bat with the ball. Then, you know, man, people just clapping. Man, the smell of baseball, man.
Everything you always wanted in a beer, and less.
Originally marketed unsuccessfully as a diet drink, light beers promised the same great taste, but with less filling, which basically just encouraged people to drink more. Miller Lite and Bud Light's advertising campaigns were hugely successful and further cemented their dominance
That's
of
the
the beer
90s.
industry. Unless you were one of the millions of Americans who enjoyed bland, watery beer, things were looking pretty bleak. But then a miracle happened.
Uh-oh.
In 1977, Congress passed a small brewer tax credit, and in 1978, a bill was signed into law that finally made home brewing legal throughout the country.
Jimmy Carter signed home brewing, one of the other great things Jimmy Carter did.
Wow, what a great man.
Yeah, absolutely. Home brewing became legal, and home brewing really drove
Oh,
the craft
really?
brewing movement. It was really tough in the early days because there was no equipment. Nobody was selling supplies to these small breweries.
Man, I didn't know that. Wow.
Well, a
That's
small brewer might need
I did not know that. Jimmy Carter was the one that said, you know, now you can just make your own beer. You don't have to worry.
1,000 pounds of malt. And they call up a malt supplier and they're like, yeah, we'll send you some malt. You know, how many train car loads do you need? It's like, well, how much is a train car? 30,000 pounds. Like, can I get 1,000?
Yeah.
You know, click.
It started slow at first, but over the years, the number of small craft breweries began to steadily increase.
So what we're seeing now, what most people think of as the craft movement, the modern one, or the second wave, really started at about 2003. There were craft brewers out there who'd been sort of sticking to their knitting and really, you know, cleaning up their game and getting things good. And new breweries started being founded, and we've had this huge, you know, upsurge of breweries.
Yep.
So that's 30 years of craft beer
Yeah.
history in a
Wow.
nutshell.
No longer limited to the light lagers that Americans had been drinking for over a century, brewers can now experiment with a variety of styles and flavors, creating new recipes and borrowing from old traditions as well. In 2015, the number of breweries in America reached an all-time high at 4,269, surpassing
Wow.
pre-Prohibition numbers. Of
Wow.
course, at the same time, after years
Wow, that is good. Yeah, because a lot of these other company, man, you know, I would love to see more locals making beer.
of mergers and acquisitions, the world's 5 biggest beer companies now control over 50% of the world's
Yeah.
beer market. Although big beer continues to dominate, it does not seem to be slowing down craft beer, and we have
Yeah.
more options for beer consumption than ever before. This is truly a good time to have a beer.
That's the dark beer.
You're of
Ugh.
age, and you drink responsibly. Stay in school. So what do you think? Do you enjoy craft brews? Do you think we're in a beer bubble that will explode at any time? Or are you content to stick with the good old mass-produced American light lager? I kind of just like it all. Let us know in the comments. Last week we did a video all about the
He
centennial.
probably one of those guys. Just give me a regular beer, man. Just whatever you have. He looks like this type of guy of, you know, he will probably go to a bar or go to a party or a cookout, and they ask him, "Oh, what kind of beer do you want? What do you have? Just give me that one." Yeah, I'm glad that we are really pushing through that. I mean, Germans, they left a very good tradition here, especially in the Midwest. When we're talking about Minnesota, Wisconsin, a lot of these Midwestern where we have a high presence of Germans, right? German, a little bit of Polish. It does, we need to just cultivate that. I don't know why we don't. It's great. But thank God with people are doing their due diligence, make sure that we keep that tradition. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, guys. You guys from Germany, what do you guys think about this? The idiocy of Germany, of Americans passing as law the 19th Amendment. It was the 18th Amendment, Prohibition, the famous Prohibition. I would love to know you guys' opinion. We'll see you in the next one.